Okay, so apparently Doomer Media and ShortFatOtaku had gone back and forth a couple of times about a number of things. And Doomer Media had asked ShortFatOtaku what a fascist is. And just a little while later, and like it seemed as though Doomer was actually getting a little bit pissed off that ShortFatOtaku was not responding right away. So Otaku did put out a video.
Far right this, far right that, far right, far right, far right. You see,
and it's named "What is a Fascist?" But
because I'm some card-carrying rightist myself. To begin with, it is clear that there are very aggressive that you're currently talking to personally doesn't like. Almost any English working speaking in between this clear I have quite a lot of liberals. Say conservative is, and that will be a video for. Of course, I haven't gotten into what fascism actually is, and that will be a video for another time.
Of course, I haven't gotten into what fascism is. That'll be a video for another time. Yet the name of the the title of the video is "What is a Fascist?" Literally says hashtag "What is a fascist?" Like the guy pretended as though he answered Doomer Media's question when he didn't. He didn't even attempt to answer it throughout the entire video. This is at the end of the video where he's finally like, oh, by the way, on my next video, we're going to get into what is fascism. So, I typed that. I said, LOL, nice, but I've heard him talk about fascism before and completely disagreed with him on it. I don't remember it too well, but I'm fairly sure Hitler didn't qualify. So he responded and said, actually true. According to the tenets laid out in the doctrine of fascism, the only real... when he says the doctrine of fascism, there's no such thing. What? Like, unless somebody... Okay, so it's a book. So this is a book by Mussolini. Okay? And Giovanni Gentile. So, like, he uses this very odd definition of fascism. And then he gets upset when anybody uses a different definition. But, like, he doesn't consider most of, like, the trademark fascists that you would think of. He doesn't consider them fascists. So he said the only real fascist countries have been Italy and Spain. Germany was nationalist socialist, and Japan was imperialist. Why? He said Germany was nationalist socialist. Why did he bring that up? What does that have to do with anything? Like, what does that, why would he bring up the fact that they're nationalist socialists? Like, that has nothing to do with whether or not they're, fascist. It's not as though you can say, like, oh, they couldn't have been fascist. They were nationalist socialists. It's not relevant. It's not relevant in any way. And I don't have a problem with Otaku. I don't have anything against the guy, but like every time I hear him talk about things, like he's well educated, he's well read, but he just seems to like have this like weird academia brain rot where like he can't interact with the real world. He's not able to talk to real people. And so everything has to be this like uber academic definition that nobody uses, and even like most academics would disagree with on tons of things. I'm not just talking about fascism. I'm talking about like a whole lot of things that every time, like I've heard him have conversations 2 or 3 times with people in the real world where it's not just him like talking by himself in a video doing an essay. So yeah, so I said, not sure, but when you say, I said, sure, but when you say nationalist socialist, you're just saying Nazism. It's not like its own category, making it less likely to be fascistic. the leader can still be a fascist. So, yeah, like literally what nationalist socialist is Nazism. Like those are the same thing. Okay, so yeah, there it is. Wikipedia, Nazism. That's what comes up. Nationalist socialism and Nazi redirect here. So like nationalist socialism is Nazism. That's what Nazi means. It means like the Nationalist Socialist Party of Germany. And so so yeah, so I'm like, you're literally just saying like oh, the Nazis weren't fascist because they were Nazis. That's what he's saying. That's such a ridiculous retort, dude. That's such a ridiculous thing to say. Like, how does that even disagree with me? I don't even understand, like, what was going through his head when I said, yeah, but this doesn't include Hitler in your definition of fascism. And he says, yeah, but that's because the Nazis were Nazis. I can't imagine what he was thinking at that point. Like, I truly can't. It was mind-blowing to read that and be like, dude, you literally just said, like, it's Nazis. Like, that's it. I said, it's not like its own category, making it less likely to be fascistic. The leader can still be a fascist. So, like, when I say it's not like its own category, making it less likely to be fascistic, like, it's not a dichotomy where, like, you can either be fascist or you can be a Nazi or, like, nationalist socialist. Like, it's one or the other. That's not a thing. So, Doomer Media replies, Tom over Dev once again. Many such cases. And Dev even liked that one, but so he said, yes, because Nazism is short for Nationalist Socialism. Yeah, true. Exactly. He said, per both the writings of Nazis and the writings of fascists at the time, Nazism isn't fascism. They are two different ideologies. So he keeps using the word fascism to disprove whether or not somebody is a fascist, where he's like, oh, well, fascists didn't say the same thing as Nazis, therefore Nazis aren't fascists. It's like, well, if you say that the Nazis were fascist, then you're wrong. Nazis did say the same thing as fascist. Like, this is based on your limited definition that you're using already. It's like a circular logic. Like, it doesn't make sense for him to keep using the word fascist in his explanation for how Nazis aren't fascists. He said they're two different ideologies. Yeah, no, duh. They're not, like, that's them being two different. This is, I seriously, I don't know. Like, are you guys? Am I crazy here? Am I losing my mind? Like, this isn't an argument, right? Like, am I nuts here? This isn't an argument at all. Yes, because Nazism is short for Nationalist Socialism. Per both the writings of Nazis and the writings of fascists at the time, Nazism isn't fascism. They are two different ideologies. I already said they were different things and that the leader can still be fascist. Like, I've already said this. This isn't like he's just repeating back to me what I already said. And then he said people call them the same thing today because they were both the baddies in World War II. That's it. That's not true. That's not true. We have a bunch of different definitions of fascism where it requires a certain amount of characteristics that both that Hitler definitely would have qualified for. That's ShortFatOtaku responding to you. Yes. What is the definition given by Mussolini in the doctrine? So I'm fairly certain it's not like a simple definition. The doctrine of fascism is an essay attributed to Benito Mussolini. In truth, the first part of the essay, entitled Idee Fundamentali, was written by philosopher Giovanni Gentile, while only second part is the work of Mussolini himself. The doctrine of fascism, Italiano, doctrine, is an essay attributed to Benito Mussolini. In truth, the first part of the essay, entitled Idee Fundamentali, Italian for fundamentals ideas, or fundamental ideas, was written by philosopher Giovanni Gentile, while only the second part, Italian for political. So yeah, it doesn't seem to say anywhere in here. I think it's like it's a doctrine. So like it's not going to give a definition. It's just going to tell you how to be a good fascist. But like I feel like the 14 characteristic of fascism is fairly close. I don't like the whole thing. So this one's by Lawrence Britt, but this one says powerful and continuing nationalism. I hate how people always do this, where they like put weird words on there, like ultra fascism, powerful and continuing fascism, or sorry, ultra nationalism or powerful and continuing nationalism. Like, I don't know what these things mean. Like, it's just somebody that's very nationalistic, right? Like, disdain for recognition of human rights. I don't think that one's necessary to me. Like, I think that you're willing to take away human rights from specific people, but that doesn't mean that you have a disdain for human rights, right? So, like, if I'm a fascist, there might be a certain group of people that I feel are the enemy, right? And I need to direct all of my followers towards this group of people. I think that is a fundamental part of fascism, is needing to have an enemy to get everybody all riled up about it, so that you all come together as one united force against the enemy, right? I think that is for sure a fundamental part of fascism. And those people who are the enemy are normally going to be the people that you want to take away human rights from, right? Well, I mean, the Nazis definitely did that with the Jews, right? Like, they had the Jews who were the enemy, and they took away their human rights. I definitely think that nationalism is for sure a characteristic of being a fascist. Like, seems pretty fundamental. Then it says identification of enemies / scapegoats as a unifying cause. Definitely believe in that. Supremacy of the military, for sure. Rampant sexism. I don't think that's necessary. Controlled mass media doesn't seem necessary. Obsession with national security. I mean, that's very likely. All of these things are likely, but I don't think these are necessary to be a fascist. Corporate power is protected, labor power is suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, fraudulent elections. Okay, so like all of these things are likely with a fascist, but I don't think that these are necessary to be a fascist. So the top 4, I would say, is like the colloquial understanding of what a fascist is. This is what most people understand a fascist to be, is somebody who is nationalistic, meaning they care more about the people that live in their nation than anybody else. So it's kind of like an America first sort of way of thinking, except it has to be to the detriment of other nations, right? In order for it to be true nationalism, you have to believe that not just America first, but America only, and hurt everybody else in the process of doing that. So yeah, to the detriment of other nations, that is nationalism. Disdain for the recognition of human rights. Okay, sorry. So I don't think that this one is necessary. I think that it's probably like, this is too broad. It says because of the fear of enemies and the need for security, the people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored in certain cases because of need. The people tend to look the other way, or even approve of tortures, summary executions, assassinations, long incarcerations of prisoners, etc. Okay, so actually, like, I think that this is probably true, but I don't think that this is necessary to be a fascist. Sorry. So the top 3, or sorry, top 3 out of 4. So powerful and continuing nationalism, identification of enemies / scapegoats as a unifying cause, and supremacy of the military. And then I would even add in one more to say, like, somebody who has a cult of personality. I think that is for sure necessary for somebody who is fascistic. Do you want the link to the video, or do you want the link to what I'm reading right now? Colloquial means that despite a definition, the public understands it as this instead. Well, it doesn't have to be instead. Like, a colloquial understanding can be the same as a definition. It's just the way that people understand a definition in general. And so, like, it's just like a general understanding, or the way that people use it in the real world. And so normally, like, what we... When we look at words, we try to find a way that most people will understand it when we use it, right? We want to find a way that we can use this with the best utility and communicate what it is that we want to communicate. Like, this is the best way to use words. And so you have to have a colloquial understanding of these words. Most of the time, most definitions, like, I think it's Oxford and Webster, both try to give the best colloquial understanding of a word. That's what, when they are defining words, I think they even say this, like, in their at the front of their dictionaries, is we are trying to give the best colloquial understanding of these words, and that's how we use, or that's the process that we use for our definitions. But the true definition is how nations are officially classified. For instance, a government memo won't be colloquial, but on the trail, a politician will spout common talk. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding what Trump to Putin. I'm sorry, Ninja, I'm not understanding what you're talking about. The true definition of what? Nationalist? Are you disagreeing with me on my definition of nationalist? Tom, didn't ShortFatOtaku give the same take to Destiny like 2 months ago, referring to Hitler as not a fascist take? Yeah, I don't know. I think so. Maybe. The page of the true definition is in the web page you had in front of you, but there is a colloquial term too. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm a little lost. Nationalism, identification with one's own nation, and support of its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. This is what I said. Unless you think I said something different than this, but this is the definition that I was using. So I'm not sure when it comes to nationalism what you disagree with, but okay. So I would use those three, plus I would add in a cult of personality. I think that that's necessary for somebody to be like a true fascist. I think that they need to have that cult of personality, to have a cult-like following behind it. But I mean, to say that when officials talk to each other, the term would be by the book, right? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, the officials don't use the term nationalist. So, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And when I just pulled this up, the definition of a nationalist is the same as what I said. So, what I said is still by the book. Okay. So yeah, so that is the way that I think most people think of fascism, understand fascism. Like, that is what most people would imagine to be fascistic. And when we talk about those 4 characteristics that I named off, powerful and continuing nationalism, obviously applied to Hitler. He even wanted to go out and take over other countries just for his country. Disdain for the recognition of human rights. That's the one that we crossed off. So number 2 is the one that we're not using. Okay. Identification of enemies / scapegoats as a unifying case. So obviously the Jews were one of the enemies / scapegoats that they used. And this is one of the reasons that people called Trump a fascist, is because he said that he was a nationalist. He definitely used like immigrants and people coming over the border, illegals, as like an enemy and made them out to be like the bad guys, but I don't think that it was in like, I don't think that he took it to an extreme that a fascist would. And then supremacy of military, obviously, like Trump didn't, what wasn't like a, I don't know what you call it, like a military supremacist or whatever, but like he definitely qualified for at least two powerful and continuing nationalism. He definitely had a cult of personality, and then the identification of enemies / scapegoats as a unifying cause. Maybe like that one is a little bit on the fence, but I wouldn't say that he had like a supremacy over the military. So Trump hated military people. I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but he wasn't like, he praised the military a lot. He always wanted to talk about how great the military was and, you know, honor the vets and all of that bull crap. And it was mostly just a way to pander to Republicans. But in general, I think that, like, I don't think he hated the military, but he seemed to be pretty anti-war. So I guess colloquially, a lot of people confuse patriotism and nationalism, which could be a problem. Yeah, I definitely think that you're right. Which is why, like, I put an emphasis on the fact that it has to be to the detriment of other nations, because I can love my nation, be a patriot, want the best for my country. I would consider myself a patriot. I would not consider myself a nationalist. But I do think that, like, America first in a lot of ways makes a lot of sense. Like, obviously, our government should be taking care of us before they take care of any other countries, for sure. But how far do you take that? Like, if there's one homeless person, yet we're sending money abroad, like, should we be housing that homeless person and feeding them first before we ever send money to another country? Probably not. When it comes to what is going to help our country most, what is actually going to put our country first, those one or two homeless people aren't going to do much for us. But us gaining allies all over the rest of the world, us gaining resources, us getting trade, like, all of these things are going to put America first for sure. Like, that's going to be a much bigger concern for America. So, like, it depends on, like, how you look at these things, but I would say that, like, I still think that we should put America first, and I think that I am a patriot, but I definitely would not identify myself as a nationalist. Trump pandered because that was GOP, but he avoided serving and thought people serving the military are dumb because he saw no profit in stated bad terms and thrown them under the bus a lot. Yeah, I think he was just a douchebag. I don't think that meant he hated the military. What is the key difference between a fascist dictator and a regular dictator? So do you mean, like, the difference between, because a dictator is, I guess, a very loose term. I'm trying to think of the word, but it's not. It's authoritarian. When we think of, like, an authoritarian, I would say that actually that's probably, I suppose authoritarian would fall into I don't know. I guess authoritarian would definitely need to be, like, the fifth thing we add on there, because I think that, yeah, authoritarianism is a necessary component to fascism. So the 4 points seem to be able to apply to almost any authoritarian regime. I don't think so, because I think, like, a lot of authoritarian regimes aren't necessarily nationalistic. They don't have to have an enemy or a scapegoat, like somebody to fight against. And I don't think that they're always beloved, and I don't think that they need to have, like, a cult of personality. Like, I think that there's a number of differences Yeah, you need race in there. I mean, normally when we talk about the enemies or the scapegoats, it's normally going to be based on race, but I don't think it necessarily has to be based on race um, in order to be fascistic. So, yeah. Anyways, so let's get back to this, okay? So, yeah, so that is the way that if I would talk about fascism, or if I would talk about the way that most people understand fascism, like that's the way that I would describe it. I said again, yes, I agree that they are different, but it's not a dichotomy. I don't understand why you think you can't have both. It's like me saying that guy wears pants, so he can't wear shirts. Shirts and pants are different. People think they are the same, but they aren't. Like, nobody thinks that Nazism and fascism are the same thing. Nobody thinks that. But they do think that Nazis were fascists, right? Like, that's ridiculous. And so this is what he's saying essentially, is like Nazism and fascism, like to be a Nazi is one thing, but nobody calls all fascists Nazis. Nobody does that. That's not a thing. Nobody ever did that. Like, I seriously doubt anybody ever has done that. Thought that anybody who is a fascist is automatically a Nazi. That's not, like, nobody does that, okay? That's so stupid. So for him to act as though people think they're the same thing is dumb. He said Nazism isn't fascism. They're two different ideologies. People call them the same thing today because they were both baddies in World War II. That's it. So no, nobody calls them the same thing. Okay. So when I say, this is like saying that guy wears pants, so he can't wear shirts. Shirts and pants are different. People think they're the same, but they aren't. Nobody thinks that shirts and pants are the same thing. And honestly, to say, well, no, he can't be wearing pants because he's wearing a shirt. Like, you can wear both. You can have both in this case. You don't need, it's not a one or the other sort of situation. This is ridiculous. Like, so like it was just getting so frustrated trying to understand what the heck this guy says, like what the heck he's trying to say. What is it that he's like, what is it that he disagrees with me on? I don't understand. Like, but he keeps acting as though people think Nazism and fascism are the same thing, and then he acts as though they are opposites, that you can't have both. It's insane. It is truly so dumb. So I said they can be different and coexist, or at least I'd like to hear why not. He said, I mean, they can obviously coexist. They did. And there is obviously some overlap as well. Nationalization of union. But there's differences in policy between them that make Nazism and fascism two different things. Here he goes again. He's arguing that they're two different things again. Why does he keep mentioning this? Nobody ever said that they're the same thing. I literally said right here, yes, I agree that they are different. I said that in the other one before this. Then I said again here, they can be different and coexist. Obviously, I know that they're different. But then he says again here, but there's differences in policy between them that makes Nazism and fascism two different things. Why is he saying this again? I don't understand. Like, this guy has truly lost his mind. Does anybody watch him? Urusama watches him. So he said, so when he said again that they're two different things, I said, okay, so maybe this is my misunderstanding. When I say he doesn't call Nazis fascists, and you say, yeah, they aren't fascists, they are nationalist socialists, I assume you're making an argument as to why they aren't fascists and not just throwing out random and irrelevant information. Right, like him bringing up the fact that they were in this first mention right here, for him to bring up the fact that they were nationalist socialists, again, sounds as though he's explaining why they're not fascist, that they can't be fascist because they're nationalist socialists, which is just the same thing as saying they're Nazis, right? Obviously, I'm not going to disagree that Nazis were freaking Nazis. So, like, either he wanted to make sure that I knew Nazis were Nazis, or he was saying they can't be fascist because they were Nazis. It was one or the other. In this argument right here, it has to be one or the other. There's no other possibility for why he brought this up. So I screenshot what it was he said and reposted it to prove that he is either just throwing out irrelevant terms or he's using this as a way to explain how they can't be fascists because they're nationalist socialists. So he said, the entire thread I just posted to you is not random and irrelevant terms. It's random and irrelevant terms. It's me summarizing political theory that nobody reads because it's far easier to just call people you don't like the fash. Points that go against your view aren't irrelevant just cuz. He thinks that I'm saying just cuz. He thinks that pointing out that they're nationalist socialist is something that goes against my view. He, like, after all of this, he's going to say points that go against your view aren't irrelevant just cuz. What did I say was irrelevant? The fact that he brought up that they were nationalist socialists. That's the part that I said was irrelevant. Like, why did you even bring this up? And he's saying points that go against your view aren't irrelevant just cuz. So now he's going back to saying that, like, this is against your view, that this is, you disagree with this. Either you disagree with the fact that they're Nazis, or you disagree with the fact that you can't be a Nazi and a fascist at the same time. It's like, this is amazing. So I said, no, I'm saying you use the term nationalist socialist as if one group ascribing to Nazism means they can't be fascist, making that term being brought into this conversation. I was typing as being brought into this conversation irrelevant in any, or it wasn't relevant in any way. I screwed that up. We can settle this fairly easily by saying you use a standard that I don't. He said, sure, I use an academic standard rooted in political theory. You use more casual standard of the fascists were the bad guys in World War II, even if that's inaccurate. I said, that's subjective. All language is to any linguist. What we try to do is find utility in terms and practical real-world application. This would have to correlate in some way to a colloquial understanding. But if I haven't given a definition, but I haven't given a definition, only said that your argument doesn't make sense. He said, consider if someone, so I haven't read this yet, consider if somebody says, I'm a Marxist, but hasn't read Marx, doesn't want workers to seize the means of production, or a dictatorship of the proletariat, or a moneyless, stateless, classless society. We don't assume they are using some alt definition. We assume they are an idiot. The only utility to be found in the obscuring of fascism origins and the broadening of the term out beyond the scope of actual fascism is to give socialists the space to say utter nonsense like fascism is capitalism in decay or liberals enable fascism. So that was my day. That was the fun that I had. I did also post this. Let's see. Anyone who cries about CNN lying, but then gets info from Daily Mail, New York Post, Breitbart, Daily Wire, TYT, Tim Pool, Hassan, or Joe Rogan, I don't believe that you actually care about misinformation. I know so many people who non-stop talk about how CNN lies. Like, they just never shut up about it. Oh, y'all can't even see the tweet. There's so many people who seriously just incessantly talk about the fact that CNN lied about this, CNN lied about that. Oh, they had a misleading headline. And most of the time when they say they lied, what it is that they used like a clickbaity headline that wasn't exactly correct. Like 99% of the time that they're talking about CNN lying, it is like literally look at the CNN article I just posted in Discord and tell me you trust them. Okay, let's see. White male anger could prove to be one of the biggest roadblocks we face in building a successful multiracial democracy. White male anger could prove to be one of the biggest roadblocks we face in building a successful multiracial democracy. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's obviously an opinion piece, so this isn't the same as lying. But, I mean, if I think about going on the panels on Politically Provoked and the people that I'm arguing against on there and the stuff that they say and how angry they are about all of this stuff, I would like to know, B. Heller, what do you think the biggest roadblock is to getting to a successful multiracial democracy? What would you say is actually the biggest roadblock? Dude, I had a 3v1 today in your chat. Don't complain about a 1v1 with a 300k subscriber, Tom. Well, no, this is the thing. It's a 300k subscriber that can't have a simple conversation. Like, who just doesn't know how to have a freaking conversation. This makes sense why he does essays, right? This makes sense why he never has anybody on to talk to and why he just, well, actually, I think he has a podcast actually with a girl, but like, it's insane. I don't know how he gets through the world when over and over, all I'm saying is, dude, I agree. There's a difference between Nazis and fascists. They're not the same thing. That doesn't mean that Nazis can't be fascists. And he responds with, but Tom, you have to understand there's a difference between Nazis and fascists. This is over and over, like over and over and over. I think we just went through something like 20 tweets. That's all it is. It's just back and forth. Me saying, yes, I agree. There's a difference. But, and then he'd come back with, but Tom, there's a difference. The anti-white narrative, the MSM pushing, and the race baiting nonstop. Literally orgs like CNN, LOL, who print racist articles like these. So you think those are going to stop us from getting to a multiracial democracy? I mean, I think that those are probably part of it. Like, I think that race baiting is definitely a part of it. I think that, a lot of anti-white stuff is definitely part of it. But I would say that there's just as many people online calling every little thing anti-white that's not anti-white as there are people online who are actually anti-white. So conservatives literally race bait as much as the left. And Candace Owens, dang it, dude, my nose is so itchy. Conservatives literally race bait as much as the left does, and Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum are only used to talk about race. Well, yeah, that's like the open debate guy who literally came in here talking about how he hates identity politics and then went on to use identity politics like 10 times in a row. Over and over and over, he was saying stuff like, I'm a black man who's a conservative. Me and the black people, we support Kyle Rittenhouse. Can I use my black experience to explain to you how systemic racism doesn't really exist? It's like, bro, why did you say you don't like identity politics? What the hell? Tom B. Heller called me a woke scold. JMMA is definitely not a woke scold. B. Heller, you guys are just too sensitive. Like, you guys seriously think every little thing is anti-white. Like, you guys think that the smallest things are anti-white. You are as bad as Xander Hall, not gonna lie. Is Xander Hall a woke scold? Doesn't he spend most of his time arguing against woke scolds? Defend the anti-white article on stream? Why do you want me to defend it? Like it's a comedy right now? You want me to defend it like it's a comedy? I, you're not making much sense to me right now, buddy. Okay. I gotta go to sleep. Why is this? It's taking too long. The fact that you say I'm sensitive to anti-white stuff with literal racist article on the screen. Dude, you sent that to me. What are you talking about? Why are you acting like I just went and pulled that up as like a way to freaking prove something? You sent that to me. You told me to pull it up. What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about with that on the screen as though like that was my idea? Yeah? I don't understand. You're not making any sense. You're like, got you, Tom. You've got this anti-white post on your screen and you're calling me anti-white? Pfft, look at you with that freaking CNN stuff on your screen.